favorite things about the University of Rochester is that the community here has never been afraid to tangle with hard questions. Now, I'm not talking about the difficult questions in physics or engineering or political science, though Rochester's plenty good at those. I'm talking more about the questions that force us to confront our own implicit biases, uncomfortable truths, our assumptions about how the world works. Our final speaker today, Beth Olivares, is the Dean of Diversity Initiatives here at the university. She's here to share a little bit of her story and to talk about what it means to be both visible or invisible in our world. Please join me in welcoming Beth Olivares.
Thank you, Nick. So much wisdom here today. I hope that you have learned a lot. I know I have, listening to all the talks. I'm here to tell you a little bit about the work that I do and my story. So this is a very pixely photograph of the University of Rochester. And the reason that I have it up here is a metaphor for the fact that students who are the first in their families to go to college, whose family income may actually be less than tuition here costs for a year, or who are unused to white spaces, predominantly white spaces. I will remind you that our K-12 education system is currently more segregated than it was in the 1950s. These folks don't always understand how to navigate the spaces of higher education because, in fact, higher education was not built for them. Low-income students and those who come from families who do not have a history of higher education often have a fraught experience when they arrive here on campus, here on our campus as well as at other campuses across the nation. Fraught because the idea of success as an academic feels to them as though they have to leave behind who they are and where they come from. So there's a dissonance that sometimes happens when such individuals become educated. They're changing their lives, and therefore they're changing, and their family relationships are changing as well. This can be very painful and burdensome. Some students may question, do I really belong here? They feel sometimes a sense of isolation. We have, there's a term called the imposter syndrome that many such students exhibit and experience. They're not quite sure how to ask for help or if they really need it or where to go, how to navigate here at Rochester our very open curriculum, making sure that they fill out the right paperwork and get the right signatures at the right times. So being first generation and low income is pretty much an invisible characteristics. But when you add into it the idea of being a raced individual, of being black or brown, those things are not always invisible. They often are things that are seen immediately, and people who see you have certain ideas about what it means to be black or brown. So students have many experiences of being both hypervisible, meaning it's very obvious to everybody when somebody is black or dark brown, but also invisible. So we have students and faculty and staff who have experiences of the hypervisibility of always being on point and always needing to talk about, to be the spokesperson for their race or to be the person who all the folks turn to in class when a question about a certain ethnicity comes up, but also being invisible. And so recently I had a conversation with an African-American woman who's a computer scientist. She has a PhD. She worked at the NSA for over a decade, and now she's in higher education. And she talks about being in the room with other people who come in and they assume that she's a secretary because they have never in their lives met an African-American computer scientist with a doctoral degree before. So hypervisible and invisible. And when you add the context of race, so the research shows that black men in particular are assumed to have ghetto-specific knowledge, regardless of where they come from or where they grew up or their education level. And this creates burdens that students bring with them, that faculty and staff bring with them, that affect their experiences here. Now, we know that the Civil Rights Act of 1965 opened up higher education to people of color. But institutions such as universities are slow to change. So we may be peopled by lots of different individuals now, but we also need to understand that we have the responsibility as institutions to change our policies and procedures and the things that we do so that we're actually what I call actively inclusive for all. We know that U of R students have a long history of activism around issues of social justice and race, and they impel us to become more actively inclusive and more equitable. And in the most recent protests over the past year, students are telling us, in fact, that they don't necessarily always feel safe on campus, that they are told, if they're Black or Hispanic, that they're only here because of affirmative action, or that it was a mistake to let them in. Douglas Leadership House, which is a house on the fraternity quad, has been targeted for really vile racist comments and also actions against the students who live there. And this leads to what the literature calls racial battle fatigue, which is the feeling of both racialized individuals and people who do race work and who may be low income or first generation, the exhaustion that you feel after a lifetime of these kinds of experiences. In the academy, racism has become something that we talk about as a historical artifact or something that happens out there and not here. But we know from listening to our students, our faculty, and our staff that that's not exactly true. So where does that leave us, right? So we think of higher education and of universities as sanctuaries of scholarship. We conserve knowledge in our libraries, in our art galleries, in our museums. We create knowledge in our research labs and our research experiences. We disseminate that knowledge by giving talks, publishing books, portraying art. And so for me, the concept of bringing with us all of who we are in terms of all of our experiences and all of our life, our qualities, and being in a sanctuary of scholarship, actually, those things intersect in an interesting way. And for me, they intersect through my personal story. And I'm going to share a little bit of that with you. So I was born into a shattered family that didn't understand or value higher education. My parents divorced when I was 3 months old. My mother, as a single mother, became an alcoholic when my older brother died at the age of 12. I was homeless twice as a teenager, quite poor, once in the Bronx and once in Puerto Rico. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I only went to college because of pressure from boyfriend, right? You can't go out with me unless you're going to be educated. So I decided I was going to become educated because I wanted to go out with the boy, which is great, right? It seems to have worked out. That boy turned into my husband. He actually became schizophrenic and tried to take my life. I survived that attempt on my life. I also more recently survived stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, right? So I have had all of these different experiences. I've lived in multiple multiracial families. My mother was also what I call a serial monogamer. She had a lot of different partners in her life. But each of these experiences has helped me understand the interdependence of human beings and the power of love and compassion to actually make a difference in the world and to create sanctuary. But it doesn't take a story like mine, although in my person it took this story to make this happen. It's actually available for all of us. So I run the Kern Center here on campus, and the Kern Center works with students from 6th grade all the way through graduate school, and I also do some work with our faculty. And our goal in the center is to transform lives through educational opportunity. I believe, because my life was changed by educational opportunity, and those of some of my colleagues and many of the people who work with me, that we can create this kind of environment so that students actually can achieve. We want the students individually to be able to achieve, and we also want to change the systems. So the K through 12 system and the higher education system need to change to make those kinds of achievements possible. We want our center to be a sanctuary. We want us to be a place where it's cool to be smart, where resources for success are the focus, and that everyone is seen. We have open and frank conversations about difficult topics, including racism, classism, sexism, and we tell the truth and validate our students' experience. We focus with a ferocity of purpose on social justice. Our goal is that every student we touch is seen and understood. So I wanted to show you this data, a little bit of data. We work in the Rochester City School District with 6th through 12th graders. So on the left-hand side, on both sides of the bar are 100 little students. And on the left side, the colored ones, there are 43. And on the right-hand side, there are 96. And what that represents is the fact that the Rochester City School District right now has a graduation rate of students who start 9th grade, only 43 of 100 will graduate. We've been in the district for 10 years working with our programs. 96% of the students who are in our programs actually graduate on time from high school in the Rochester City School District. Thank you. And not only do they graduate on time, but they also enroll in college. So no one can tell me that even though Rochester has the highest child poverty rate in the nation for a city its size, and our schools are under-resourced and constantly under attack, that the children in the Rochester City School District can't achieve success. In the undergraduate realm, our students' 4- and 5-year graduation rates outpace national and college averages. 85% of the students in our McNair program, which encourages students who are low-income first-generation and minority students to go into PhD work, 85% of them go on to graduate study. Over 110 already have doctoral degrees. Our alumni are professors, researchers, clinicians, surgeons. They're all over the country and, in fact, all over the world doing work that makes a difference. And they describe their experiences in our program as transformational. Brandon, who you saw on the earlier slide, is now at NASA. He is a PhD in optics from the U of R last year and is now a research scientist at NASA. So I've been humbled in the past couple of years to receive several national awards for the work that I do. And I have always downplayed comments such as Dylan's here on the screen, believing as I do in the innate ability of every student to succeed and to achieve his or her goals. But more recently, I've come to understand that it's true. Without the space that I and my colleagues have made purposefully here at the U of R, many of my students would never have actually been seen. They might never have had the opportunity to speak their dreams, never possibly understood that the path that they could take was actually there for them. When we say no one is invisible, we mean that whatever your circumstance, wherever you come from, whatever your issue is, your problem, or your thing to celebrate, we're here for you and we love you. We see you and we understand that you have circumstances that are beyond your control, but those circumstances do not prevent you from actually achieving your academic dreams. So the challenge is to make this real at the entire university level and make the whole academy such a place. One of the ways that we're trying to do that is through the university's anti-racism campaign, We're Better Than That. Because we believe that our responsibility as educated people is to bring more light into the world and to drive out the darkness of racism and hatred. There are as many ways to do that as there are people in this room, in this university, alumni across the country. Meliora, in fact, requires that we leave the world a better place than we found it when we got here, and that we enable our students, our alumni, and ourselves to live out the promise that's embedded in our logo or mission. Learn, discover, heal, create, and make the world ever better. Thank you.
Beth Olivares, everyone.